Hi everyone, I'm Sophie Milburn, editor of the MSP Channel Insights portfolio, and I'm joined today by Steve from Exabeam. So to start, could you introduce yourself, your role at the company, and a bit about the company itself?
Sure thing. So thanks for having me, Sophie. I'm Steve Wilson. I am the Chief AI Officer at Exabeam. Exabeam is a cybersecurity company that helps people run their cybersecurity operations and find threats faster, find hard to find threats, and we'll get into that. Also, on the side, I am the founder of the OWASP Gen AI Security Project, which is a project now of 25,000 volunteers that builds materials on how to secure large language model and agentic style applications.
Amazing, that's a great little intro, thank you. So there's a growing discussion around the kind of risks of automated cybersecurity being built on outdated models. So what are the kind of key limitations that you're seeing through those approaches today?
That's a great question. And I think what we've seen is that while we've had a lot of changes in the underlying technology that people in a SOC use over the last 20 years, going from, simple log file aggregators to SIMs to, more recently, cybersecurity co-pilots and agents.
Mhm.
Um, the fact is that's not keeping up with the changes that are out there. And really what you see is the basic model is collect logs, have humans sort through the alerts, possibly giant piles of them,
Yeah.
and try to make decisions fast enough to keep up with what's going on. And the fact is, the world is moving too quickly for that.
Yeah. I think it's almost impossible to stay up to date with everything. But what would you say kind of maybe the main forces kind of currently reshaping cyber threats, and how are those changes impacting the way that MSPs in particular need to kind of approach security for their customers?
I talk about two things that are the big drivers, and they lead to a third, which is the big conclusion and the big scary thing coming at us.
Mhm.
So the first one is what I call simply the rise of the agentic enterprise. Uh, every single large company and small companies probably as well are going to roll out AI agents at scale over the next couple of years. You might think that already happened, but people are using chatbots. That's different than
Yeah.
using true agents, which really can do work and also
Mhm.
can do a lot more damage. So we'll talk about agents in the SOC, and that's a really important topic. But just remember, that's going to be a tiny portion of the agents running in your business. The next one is the bad guys all have agents.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, people would look at it and say, I don't think these agents are going to materially help a hacker. And sure, hackers have scripts and then they had little chat bots. What we've seen now is the fact is these are serious hacking tools. And what we've seen in the last couple of weeks with the announcement of Anthropic's Mythos and their Project Glasswing is the current state-of-the-art frontier models. They were originally designed for coding, and those coding skills are 100% transferable to offensive cybersecurity. So that's the two big factors, and they lead to the big scary one at the end, which is a large company is likely to have 10 times as many employees in a couple of years as it does today. Just 9 out of 10 of those employees are going to be digital workers, not humans. Um, by the same token, you are going to be under 10 times as many sophisticated attacks as you are today.
Yeah.
You put those two things together, and you are going to be dealing with 100 times the amount of data and signal and noise that your security operations team is going to have to sift through.
Yeah, it's almost like it's just going to multiply and kind of spiral out of control a little bit is the vibe that I'm getting. But yeah,
Yep.
as you mentioned, the kind of concept of agentic enterprise is gaining a lot of traction. So why does the kind of autonomous SOC model kind of fall short in protecting those environments at the moment, do you think?
So let's start by talking about what agents are good at and what they're bad at, because this is the most important thing to understand right now. And this has been true the whole time we've been building things on this architecture the last few years, and it's definitely going to be true for the next few at least, which is there are things that software has always been really, really good at. It's an important part of why software is such a powerful tool for us. Um, Computers are good at math and they are
Mhm.
good at repeatability.
Right.
Um, agents, things built on large language models, they're good at dealing with uncertainty, they're good at dealing with unstructured data, and they're great at dealing with language.
Mm.
These are all things traditional software is terrible at.
Right.
Um, the problem is, in a lot of cases, what we're trying to do is replace software
Mm.
with these new agentic models because they're better. Or we're trying to do things in software that really should be done by people. And the fact is, this mismatch leads us to the point where we use AI agents to do things that they just lack the judgment to do. And we ask them to do things that must be highly repeatable and reliable, and they're
Mm.
not good at those things. And so what you have is this new proposal that we're going to build autonomous socks, that we're going to take the human judgment and set it aside, and that we're going to have these digital agents running our cybersecurity.
Mm.
I think it's insane at this
Yeah.
point to talk about it that way. There's an
Mm.
important role for these agents, but I really believe the place that we're headed for is we need to be building high performance human agent teams, not autonomous socks.
Yeah, it's always about that kind of human in the loop element, isn't it? But then how do you kind of find that balance? How would you have any advice, maybe striking that balance between AI and automation, but also keeping that human judgment and keeping the human in the loop?
Yeah, I hate the term human in the
Oh,
loop.
do you?
Um, I think actually it was a very early but somewhat naive attempt to say, hey, we need human guidance involved in these things. But what we've seen with those early architectures is they reduce the humans to approvers. Basically, your human is
Right.
reduced to pushing the Y key over and over and over again throughout the day.
Mhm.
And what we've actually seen from a very concrete point of view is the value of the human in the loop drops to near zero very quickly because they actually stop caring and stop paying attention.
Mhm.
If that's not true, they become the weakest link in the chain. The reason to have moved to agent is to radically improve your speed. And if the human needs to cross-check everything the agent is doing, you've lost that entire speed advantage.
Right.
So instead, you need to build a new architecture. And sometimes this is referred to as human on the loop. And you actually see this architecture used a lot more in very sophisticated AI applications, self-driving car fleets like Waymo, next generation uh, combat fighter plane drones. How do you use the human to do what they're great at, which is exercise human judgment, bring rationality and responsibility to the situation, guide the overall process while using the agents for what they're good at, which is high speed data processing for uncertain, unstructured data. If you can put the two of those together and build those high performance teams, then you will get a dramatic acceleration in your ability to handle the workload coming with that 100x onslaught of data.
Yeah, and how does this kind of look more specifically, I guess, looking for MSPs, especially when you look at those things for their security offerings like visibility and control and trust and all of those. Yeah, where do the kind of MSPs play a part in all of this?
Yeah. So MSPs have often been at the forefront of adopting new technology. We've seen a lot of MSPs who have adopted agentic technology in some form. But going back to what these agents are great at, there's a lot of things an MSP has to do every day that are very costly for them that are actually the kinds of things that agents are great at. So, first, the thing that I think is the superpower of some of these large language model based software models is the thing that always fell down in the old models, which is explainability. We could have high-end models with thousands of rules that were processing the data being piped into your SIM, your log aggregator, and it would pop out a finding that says, this is a problem. Uh, your humans then spend hours decoding that. Um, the power of the agents is once you have sifted through all that data and you're trying to work with a smaller amount of data, make it explainable, translate it from that machine oriented explanation into a human one, that can be amazing. And so, as an MSP, you can be leveraging that inside your SOC. The other thing you can be doing is you can be pushing that boundary out towards your customers. The other thing that is really challenging for MSP is when there is a crisis, when there is something that people need to know, how do you communicate with them quickly and effectively? How do you deal with their follow-up questions? These are things where agents can streamline the workflows a lot. Um, the other thing, and I think it's just worth throwing out there, which is MSPs are after automated solutions.
Yeah.
I do see a lot of companies out there who are rebranding tired SOAR solutions as agentic SOC solutions. And the fact is, that didn't solve your problem before. It's probably not going to solve it now. The other thing is, we see people experimenting with pure agentic solutions. Say, I'm going to replace all my current automation with it. Go back to what are these things bad at? They're bad at math, they're bad at repeatability. You're going to have to take a lot of measures to really get the best out of using those techniques for automation.
Yeah, it can just never be a quick fix. It's never going to be a quick fix by the sound of it. As AI agents kind of become more embedded in business processes, how should organizations start to kind of rethink things like governance and accountability to ensure that these systems do remain secure and compliant kind of moving forwards?
The thing I've been telling people for the last few years is you've got to get familiar with the technology. And 2 years ago, I would talk to a CISO and I would ask them, do you even use Chat GPT? And the answer is like, no, why would I do that? I heard that's not good, makes
Yeah.
things up. I'm like, if you don't use it, how are you going to secure it? All your employees are going to be using it. The fact of the matter is today, about 100% of the people in the world have used Chat GPT, probably do on a weekly basis. Um, so they know how these things work, except everything changes all the time. And when we talk about agentic architectures, we don't mean Chat GPT anymore. It's one of the reasons I've almost entirely stopped using the term AI agent when it matters, because it means everything and it means nothing at this
Yeah,
point.
it's almost like it introduces those misconceptions about it that it's still the
Yeah.
original thing.
So when we look at where things are trending, I'm
Mm,
using the term digital worker, and I'm using that to describe the advanced AI agents that combine reasoning and automation and the ability to do work. These are built on these new architectures like OpenClaw and Claude Cowork. There's a dramatic difference here is that these are not prompt and response architectures. These have what are called agentic loops. They run 24 hours a day. The reason I call them digital workers is because that's the thing they most closely map to. When set up properly, they have their own identities, they have roles, they have jobs that they are assigned to do. And the thing I tell people from a cybersecurity perspective is the best place to look for how to secure them is your HR manual. When you are going to deploy a new agent, strike that out and say, I'm going to hire a new worker and just
mm,
take the parts out where you have to pay them and register them for healthcare. But from an IT perspective, I'm going to onboard them. I'm going to assign them an identity. I'm going to assign them access to the applications that they need and only the applications that they need. I'm also going to make sure that all those things are wired up so that I can actually see and monitor all of that activity from my SOC and really treat these as potential insider threats, just like I do my humans, rather than treating them as software applications.
Right. I'd never thought about it that way. I feel like you've blown my mind. But yeah, it's such a good way of thinking about it in terms of it's almost like a new employee. That's yeah, I just haven't heard it said like that before. So it's really interesting. I guess kind of like looking forward, maybe building on that, or maybe something slightly different. If there's anything else that you think maybe might be coming up to have an impact on MSPs, or what kind of trends or developments do you see kind of happening in the next couple of years?
I think the MSP business, it's a good business to be in right now. I think what we see is with that 100x deluge of data that's going to be coming at us with AI-enabled hackers. The place for the MSP was always for organizations that aren't sophisticated enough to run their own cybersecurity operations. And you might largely bucket that into small, medium business or small, medium enterprise and assume that large businesses can take care of themselves. I think that's going to get to be less and less true. The threat landscape is going to be like nothing that we've seen over the next few years. We're going to need to push the boundaries as an industry, and that means corporations, service providers, cybersecurity tool providers. We're going to need to work together and we're going to need to push this forward and push it forward quickly because the bad guys are not slowing down. Even when you have these organizations like Anthropic that look responsible about what they're doing with these AI agent models, saying, I'm shipping a new dangerous one. We're going to do this carefully. Somebody in China is not doing that, and they are shipping it all open source with no guardrails. And we need to assume that things no more than 6 months behind the frontier are available to everybody from North Korea to Russia to every script kiddie in their basement. So I think the opportunity here is that for MSPs that lean forward into these technologies, when they adopt these agentic technologies the right way, when they build highly effective human agent teams, um, those are going to be dramatic accelerants. And I think the coming discipline that I would encourage them to really understand and experiment with is how do you secure those AI agents? That basic model of treating them as employees, I think is important, but it unlocks a whole new discipline. And we used to talk about user behavior analytics. It's still an important part of what most MSPs do. The next thing coming is agent behavior analytics
Yeah.
and investing in the expertise and the technologies to be able to do that for your customers is going to differentiate you and allow you to go after bigger customers and bigger contracts.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting time to be a part of the channel, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next couple of years and what happens at Exabeam. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time today. That is all my questions.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sophie. I appreciate it.